But as being part of Visma, you kind of get equipped with the necessary tools, expertise, competence to succeed in whatever you're doing. So we have these hubs. So I'm part of one of the hubs, the Product Analytics Hub. We appoint a board of director. We have some segment support and all that type of stuff to basically make the company succeed. All right, and as we know within tech, I think, I'm maybe preaching to the choir to this crowd. So the reason why we're focusing a lot on this is because we see so many other vendors out there, mainly the B2C companies are doing crazy stuff, and they're doing a pace that B2B companies kind of are lagging behind, so to say. So we're definitely in a place where we're doing so many experiments, and we kind of need to catch up onto that. And I really like this example, basically showcasing the growth and the development of experimentation. And I think within retail and manufacturing is a very good example. So in the 1990s, we saw within fast fashion that we have big disruptors as Inditex, Uniqlo, H&M coming into place and basically crushing the markets, delivering 100 new items per week, which is an incredible kind of manufacturing result, so to say. I think 20 years later, we see companies like ASOS, Fashion Nova, they're really upgrading kind of how they manufacture in retail. Something called ultra fast fashion was established. So they managed to deliver 7,000 new items per week, which is basically a 70 times uplift from the already companies that are dominating the markets. And what we see now is a company called Shein. Maybe if you have a teenage kid, this is something you recognize because that's their target markets. And if they're on TikTok or Instagram or any social media. So they managed to deliver 18,000 new items per day. So that's almost three times more than a company does in a week that they manage to do in a day. And at this velocity, like new items, new designs, at this velocity, you can't even compete with this. It's impossible, right? And this is some stats I found on TechCrunch. They are basically leaders, and they're taking everything from the shadows because this is a company that nobody really knows about. And just to kind of simplify it, bring back to where we are, we understand that these companies they're successful, I think, for these main reasons. There are many other reasons, but I think this is the core to it. They manage to collect user behavior very nicely. They apply quantitative research methodologies and are very good at kind of scaling it. And they're very good at defining the relevant metrics in their respective fields. So that's what we understand in simple terms. So this would be a typical user of Visma, a customer of Visma. Eugene, he's an entrepreneur at some company, and he needs business software to operate his business. He needs to maybe he want to get a general understanding of his business and browse around, for whatever. He wants to report hours for some consultant work, and maybe he wants to generate some new payrolls for his employees. But as you see, it gets quickly very, very complex. And I think understanding the needs of a user, it comes into twofold. This is at least how we see it at Visma. Partially what people say about our products and what they actually do in our products. And as said, doing all of this, and this was just 3 examples, and it's already pretty hard to see this flow diagram. And imagine 1,000 permutations on 10,000 users. That's really complex. And so this is kind of our setup that we have at Visma. We're using Snowplow for user behavior tracking, and we're using something called InMoment, formerly Wootrick, for user feedback collection. So the problem that we're addressing at Visma is how do we deliver user behavior data to over 300 products that are operating in completely separate domains and still provide value. That's the problem that, I am trying to solve. And our approach is to easily get started and get so many things out of the box. And that's it. No, I have more to present. So I think these 4 categories, it's an oversimplification, but I think this kind of explains how we kind of work with this. Yes, I don't know if you guys recognize any of these logos. Maybe not. I see some nodding. Yeah, all right. Well, these are 42 companies that Visma acquired last year. And that's a pretty crazy thing. It might sound a little bit scary, but that's the whole thing why I showed the slide earlier. Each of these companies, they all operate under the Visma umbrella, but we make sure that each of them kind of succeed in their respective category, whether it's towards entrepreneurs, if it's a revenue system, if it's a payroll system, it doesn't really matter. And the challenge is how do we supply product analytics to all of these if the speed of acquisition is this quick? So easy onboarding is kind of the key to everything. And yeah, that's Confluence. We have Confluence at Visma. So our approach here is to give each of these teams, each of these companies, a seamless experience to get started. And they should have continuous support all the time. So we should always be there when they ask for something. So always be quick to grab the ball. I don't know if you can say that. And basically what every team goes through is kind of an onboarding process. And they go through a few steps to get started. First of all, they get access management because they're all in isolated domains. You can't kind of, we need to respect kind of data integrity and not kind of share data among companies that shouldn't see each other's data. Implementation guides on Snowplow, fantastic documentation, snowplow.io that we are using of. And then we have something we do internally. So we have this legal department that does all these things privacy related, trust center, like privacy policies and all that type of stuff. So we do an assessment of the intent of utilizing the data, because that's very important, especially if you work with B2P software like payroll systems, ERP systems, and that type of stuff. We have set up 2 environments. We have one full-fledged test environment and one full-fledged production environment. So basically just to have an easy-to-access tool for developers to test kind of the tracker setup. And then you're basically done. And I think we're able to onboard a company in 2 days, 2-3 days, then they're up and running. Yeah, that's actually key to actually scaling it because we are very few. We're only 3 people supplying this service to all of these companies. The next step is to provide a lot of out-of-the-box stuff. And that's where we have our automated infrastructure and baseline capabilities. So some problems that we face at Visma and how we see this. I mean, SaaS vendors are super nice, right? Because they give you kind of a tool and you can basically do a lot of stuff very quickly. But I mean, for somewhere like Visma, like having a vendor and tries to scale it to like 300 companies, I mean, the license cost would be crazy. And especially if these product analytics tools have a payment model that's transaction and user-based, and we don't have a revenue model that's based on the user base because it's not B2C, it's B2B. So it's actually only costly for Visma to acquire a product analytics tool. And we require a lot of scalability and flexibility. That's the whole point with this exercise. We handle very business-critical systems, as you have seen, which means that we require full control to handle security, audit processes, and all that type of stuff. We have to be able to tell them how we're defining a retention policy and how we are handling the data, basically. And we want to be able to at least create a central baseline, but still allow flexibility. So give people a bunch of stuff, but then also give them flexibility to do whatever they want. Yeah, this is the kind of what we do. We have all of the apps at Visma. We have a collector configuration, and we set up kind of a collector endpoint for each product. We do have a common one, but if teams want to have their own collector endpoint, we'll just set it up. And then it comes to this thing here, the pipeline that gets stored in an events table. And we're doing all this on a Google GCP stack. So this entire thing here is all GCP technology, like GKE, Kubernetes, the Kubernetes engine, PubSub, BigQuery, load balancer, yeah, all the typical GCP stuff. And then we make sure to create an infrastructure where each application are allowed to subscribe to the pipeline. So if they want to reroute the data to their CRM system or do some reverse ETL stuff, they can do that. We're just supplying the entire infrastructure for them. Yeah, and once we get to this events database, what we do, and that's what we use Dataform for. We do have discussions about migrating over to DBT because of the, yeah, you guys know the crazy stuff that's happening. Well, not crazy, life is more exciting than that, right? Yeah, so what we do is basically we take this really big events table and then we split it up to each app. So basically replicating the environment as we go. So we borrowed many of the Snowplow's kind of data models. We've started from the ones that were from Dataform, but then we're kind of building it in-house and refine it to our needs because we need to scale in a different way. Mobile analytics, we also have that as well, onboarded as well. So now we have set up a data infrastructure for a team, for an application. So any team that has a product analyst can dive into the data and just enjoy life. But then for the product managers that don't enjoy life, they will basically have also an automated setup in, well, at Visma we use Tableau for BI and that type of stuff. We basically have a template for a baseline setup. And it's very easy to set it up. It's basically plug and play, change data sources, and then you're up and running. Yes. So to summarize this part, we have a very high degree of automation, and this allows us to create the baseline for data sets and views for each product that we need. We can enable event streams for each team so that they can actually subscribe to the pipeline. So we're creating a distributed ecosystem at Visma to give them real-time user behavior as a service. We're provisioning certificates to kind of bypass the third-party part, so everything becomes first-party data collection. And as I said in the beginning, we're only 3 FTEs supplying the service. So this actually shows how scalable it is to work with this, as long as you have the right tooling in place. And I think how we kind of pitch it is like this. We give you reports for operations, we give you some basic metrics for decision making, and we give you a bunch of data sets for the analysts and scientists and developers to do whatever they want, basically. All right, so that's kind of the tools, right? But as we know, tools are worthless if there's no good frameworks around it, right? So this is a guy, he was at Visma once and spoke. He's a really nice guy to talk to. And he said this very nice thing. Yeah, it's a bit of a cliche, right? Because we all know this. Data is super nice. We can have super cool infrastructure, but if the guy is if an organization is very, how do you say, people driven, it can be a bit troublesome to use the data for good purposes. So for that we have index and frameworks, and as I said, to really utilize user behavior and really kind of adopt this. So now we're talking about change management. We're not talking about cool tools and cool data. We need to incorporate and create a framework for this. And how we've done it is that we created an insights index. I mean, we have 300 companies out there in Visma. So, I mean, we should utilize that, right, at Visma. So we're able to create a tool where all the products are able to kind of benchmark their ability to work, user research oriented, and how they work with behavioral data. So we have this index set up for security, cloud infrastructure, and all that type of stuff. We have a bunch of trainings around metric frameworks. I think North Star framework is the one that's very popular now, so we're teaching that a lot. So basically, as I said, we created kind of this baseline setup of analytics tools, right? But I mean, it's just a baseline, and nobody's probably going to use it. So there are, hence the SaaS vendor. Like nobody uses the SaaS vendors really, even though they're so easy to use. So with the metric frameworks, they're actually able to kind of extend that even further and really incorporate into the organization. And the index that we're working with is pretty simple. The index is basically based on the hypothesis that if a team does research, they are more successful. And the output of the index will give them, okay, you're on bronze level, you're on silver level, or you're on gold level. And depending on their level, they will get a set of recommendations of what type of activity they should do. Have a blueprint document for your events, or please set up your PMPS feedback service, or set up Snowplow, or create a user journey mapping, all the type of activities. So basically giving them things to work with, so to say. Yeah, so I think the product chart, I got it from a guy, Justin Bauer from Amplitude. Super good guy to talk to and follow his content about frameworks and that type of stuff. Yeah, and the Heart framework as well, which is a very nice Google framework to work with. All right, and I mean, we do all of this stuff, but it doesn't get kind of real if we don't share it with everyone, right? And of course, we have Slack, we have internal communities for that. We have various internal events. We have something called the Data Summit, which is basically bringing lots of, all of the Visma people and talk data. We have a hackathon where we basically just use a fully anonymized Snowplow dataset and people can go nuts. Then we don't really care about, don't have to worry about like kind of data integrity and stuff like that. And then sharing different use cases. So I think our team's job is to kind of create these use cases. So these are, I mean, 3 use cases that we've done. So one of them is to help a pretty traditional product to actually understand what is an active user. And we also help another team to set up kind of how they can use this data in their regular like product management forums. And a third one, which is maybe for me a little bit more interesting, is do more like predictions on the event sequences that has been produced in the software. So what we've learned so far is that we think enabling user behavior is very challenging, and it's more organizational rather than, I mean, tools. And we see that as long as we give very fast support, we'll basically be able to do this. And I think we're all, at least our team in Visma, is very eager on doing like open source stuff, new cool technology. And I think that takes you really, really far. And I mean, trusting the data is very important for us. Both trust as in, okay, we collect it safely, but also we show them that, okay, we're delivering good use cases. That's also very important. Yeah, so what we'll do now is basically to scale this organization, right? So we will staff up analytics competence, we'll pursue more use cases, make the base offering even better, and we'll create more templating around typical product analytics tooling like feature adoption, cohorts, segmentations, and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's it for me.
Right, thank you very much, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.